This episode is brought to you by our partner, Ice Barrel. Cold therapy was an integral part of my training. When I was a gymnast, I would be in that cold tub after every training session for a number of years, and it's still something I take part of as part of my recovery, my mental health, as well as my performance in and out of the gym. Please check out their FAQ page for everything you need to know about Ice Barrel and cold therapy. If you've never tried cold exposure before, we cannot recommend Ice Barrel enough. They have events all over the US, and we also introduced contrast therapy as an added session at our Power Monkey camp. It was a huge hit with our campers and coaches alike. We cannot wait to have them back again. Please use Power Monkey, that's all caps, Power Monkey, no spaces, and save $75 off your Ice Barrel. Welcome to the Power Monkey podcast, where we chat with the best in the world about what they do. I'm your host, Dave Durante, with my co-host, Mike Service, and on today's episode, we have Mark England. Mark is a mindset coach who has built tools to help people better tell their stories and make their internal dialogue work for them. He is the creator and head coach of Enlifted, which gives practical mindset tools to help coaches unlock freedom and confidence. We got us take on a variety of topics that are present right now with a lot of the coaches and athletes within the fitness space that we've seen that prevent them from reaching their highest potential. Mark gives us some really great suggestions on how to take on these challenges head on and help make all people he works with more participatory in their own stories and not just a bystander. It was great to chat with Mark, and hopefully you can find some helpful tips and tools to apply to your own training and coaching. Enjoy. Well, your background is more Muay Thai, I believe. So that space, and I wanted to kind of jump in from the athletics side before we get into kind of what you're doing now. I want to talk a little bit about the athletic side. You haven't been an athlete, and I heard you talking a little bit about at the time being kind of addicted to being a fighter and the tough guy mentality, and what it meant as an identity of you being addicted to that, and just the framing around you saying that you were addicted to that personality. And it resonated with me a little bit because, Mike and I were both higher level athletes, and I had been asked this quite a bit during my career about how much time we put into training and, whether or not that's healthy. And, a lot of times myself, I felt like if I devoted all of my energy, all of my time, and was basically obsessed with training, that it would allow me to achieve the highest level. And some people look at that negatively, saying don't want to be obsessed with anything. It should be more of a passion. And to me, when you were saying being addicted to being an athlete, is that just a framing, a negative framing? If you would have looked at it more of, hey, I'm extremely passionate about this, or is there a way to make the framing around that positive to get something out of it, rather than just saying, I'm addicted to something, let me see if I can move into something that's a little bit more conducive to a long-term plan?
Yeah, I could reframe that, and I'd be lying. I was addicted to it. So like the movie Ray, you ever see that with
Sure.
Jamie Foxx, when he's coming off of I believe it's at the end of the movie, he's coming off of heroin, and he's lying in bed sweating, having these like really hard shakes. So I moved over to Thailand in 2002 because I thought I was a tough guy. And 6 months later, it was a very big deal for me to go over there. I had 3 going away parties. I'd only had my passport for 2 years. And I went over there for a year. That was the plan. I ended up staying over there for 10, which still sounds a little strange to say, but that happened. And I go over there, and a couple of training accidents, and the whole thing stopped. And I was addicted to that identity of being a fighter because it was my Band-Aid for some stories that I was holding on to from back in elementary school. That's where a couple of them started. So I was bullied in high school a little bit by the upper class, but some fights broke out in elementary school on the playground. Danny Potter, I can see it just like it was yesterday. And I ran away. And it happened a couple of times. And I used that as evidence that I was a scaredy cat. And I didn't like the way the being a scaredy cat felt. So I was going to go on the offensive and prove to everybody that I wasn't scared, and ended up being decent enough at it, got a reputation for it. And I really liked people being scared of me. To be completely honest, I enjoyed people being afraid of me. And that was a shadow part of my self. And when I couldn't do that anymore and I wasn't that guy anymore, I said, I'm going to stay over here and see what happens, because I'm not going back to the States and not be that guy. All my friends were fighters, people getting their black belts, open up gyms, going pro. And I was like, no. So there were very positive aspects of it too, of course. I was a poor student in when I was in school, mostly because I was distracted a lot, or was bored. That's a better way to say it. And jiu-jitsu was the first thing that really held my attention, and that was the first place that I ever built a work ethic. It was the first place that I ever showed up on time, put in extra hours, and excelled because of the repetitions that I was putting in, which served me later in life. So it was a mixed bag.
Mm-hmm. I think I love that. And I mean, the story is heartbreaking in a way that you had to go through all that to kind of, move halfway across the world to try to find exactly what this meant. But then the next step, and this is where, I was trying to get the conversation to go to, because a lot of the athletes that we work with and that we see, and both from gymnastics and weightlifting, once that identity is no longer tied to being an athlete, you become lost. Like, my career is over. I have that knee injury, whatever it might be that stops that identity from being tied to you as a person. How am I supposed to navigate the world if I'm not the athlete who kicks people's asses or the gymnast that's on the top of a podium? From your perspective, what did you do to be able to find that next step in terms of finding out who you were?
Great question. First thing I did is I didn't laugh for an entire year. I don't recommend doing that, because I entrenched such a victim mentality in my head about what this meant, what it meant about me. And what it meant about me is that it was the biggest thing I'd ever gone after in my life. And I fell flat on my face. And now this is the final piece of damning evidence in a case that I was secretly making against myself, that I wasn't good enough. I was using fighting as a way to validate myself that I was good enough, or prove that I wasn't scared. And so when that stopped, darkness descended. And after a year of that, so I was an elementary school PE teacher in Bangkok for 5 years. That was the first 5 years I was over there. Great gig, and at an international school. And after a year of not laughing, not enjoying myself at all, I went down to a spa, a cleansing resort on an island in the Gulf of Thailand. And I paid them some pretty good money to not eat for 7 days. It was a great business model, right? And I felt better. And I went back my third time down there. I went to an emotional detoxification workshop, and I saw a woman walk in with it was a stinger of a breakup story. It really was very humiliating. And the sentence that held the whole thing together was, "He did that to me." And the guy that was facilitating this workshop, there's about 30 people in there, he took her through a journey into that story, and the guy knew what he was doing. He was paying attention to where the rubber meets the road, which is the words. And he got that one sentence, had her repeat it 3 times. "He did that to me." And then he said that last word, "take out me and put in himself." And it was such a radical departure from the story that she'd been relentlessly telling herself about what the thing meant. Because that's the thing. So it's not so much the story that gets us, it's the meaning that we assign to the story that gets us. So it wasn't so much that my fight career ended, okay? It was what it meant to me that it ended. And she goes, it was clunky. The delivery was clunky, and it went up at the end. It's called uptalk. He did that to himself, and then you see the breath unlock. He did do that to himself. And then she starts talking about how he lost friends. It was worse for him. And then finally she goes, it was never going to work out anyway. That guy was actually really weird. And she walked out of there with a completely different meaning assigned to that same. We didn't go out and change the past. Who can do that? You can change what it means though. And that's the art and the science of helping people with their mindset. That was the first time I ever saw it. I've fallen in love, to take out, a couple of beautiful women along the way. And I've fallen in love twice on site. Once was the first time I got choked in jiu-jitsu, and the second time was when I saw that in 2003. And I was like, that's cool. And I want to learn it. And I had no idea where it was going to go. Yeah.
Yeah. So from that moment, your whole perspective, I imagine, changed in terms of not only for yourself internally, but maybe for what you envision as the next phase of what you want to do as a career path?
That, all I knew is I was a hot mess, and I saw someone change their story. And actually, I had the same story verbatim. He did that to me. We were warming up. He shouldn't have been kicking that hard. And I was so closed off. I wasn't talking to anybody. So at the end of the workshop, he paired everybody up and said, here, 5 minutes, you coach this person and then we'll switch them up. I was the coach for the first 5 minutes. And this woman told me a story, and I'm fumbling around trying to help her with the words, because that's where this thing goes. And then he goes, switch. And so she's going to coach me. And I looked at her. I said, I'm sorry, I'm leaving, because I'm not opening up to anyone about anything. I did take action, though. I got up, walked to the internet cafe, which they had at that time, and downloaded an 80-page manual on how to do this work on yourself. And I went back to my bungalow and I started going into the stories that bothered me the most, the stuff I had never written down. I'd never written it down. It's so much easier to help people with their mindset when the spooky stories are written down. I can elaborate on that later. And so I taught PE for a few more years, and then I decided, and I kept practicing with this stuff. I went and got did a training with the founder of this system that I was using, helping with people with their stories. And I go, you know what? I'm going to go pro with this. And so I went back to that same spa, and in January 17th, 2007, I put my poster up with all the other practitioners at that same spa. And it was in the middle of busy season. I booked up immediately, and I've been somewhere between full-time and overtime the whole time, staring at the words for the past 16 years. This is where mindset goes, everybody. This is where, because we have you know what mindset is? Our definition of mindset, it's very complicated. It's the story that we tell ourselves. That's what it is. Because everybody's telling themselves a story about what they can do and what they can't do, and what they do deserve and what they don't deserve, and what is possible and what isn't possible. And most people's language is working against them, as in what words they're using. And so there's a game to play.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, Mark, just thinking about some of that, and I've tried to write a few questions down, but not zone out, because I'm interested in wanting to listen. When you're listening to somebody, and then this will get to my second question, do you find yourself still, though, maybe struggling to not project your story onto their story?
That is a world-class question. So it is what we recommend doing. Okay, so for everybody, I'm one of the co-founders of Enlifted, and I'm the head coach. I deliver all the trainings. I've certified all of our 370 level 1 students, and then the level 2s, and then the level 3s. And day 1, call 1, level 1, we talk about the importance of, 1, observing the client's story instead of believing the client's story. That might sound cold initially. And when we unpack it, it makes sense. When we observe the story, we get to pay attention to the components, the mechanics, what it's built of. Okay. And to answer your question directly, it's a whole lot easier to observe the story and not get sucked in, which is called drama bonding. And if a coach drama bonds with their client for long enough, they're right around the corner from trauma bonding, and that's a mess. And that is your breath. Your breath is the seat of your good coaching when it comes to helping your client change their mindset, also known as the story they tell themselves. So when someone is breathing low and slow, they're in a parasympathetic state, and they're able to observe things. They're able to establish a very good rhythm. We have a saying, good breathing equals good coaching, because good breathing equals good listening, and good listening equals good coaching. So good breathing equals good coaching. And then we can get techie if we want to and talk about amygdala hijack. So that's what happens when, or at least that's Daniel Goleman's term for it. When someone goes into a stress response, let's say your client shares a traumatic story with you, and it might resonate with something unresolved in your story, or you automatically feel terrible for them, or you want to agree, yeah, that like the woman who had that bad breakup. Oh yeah, the guys, you can't, men are only out for one thing, or whatever it is. Then you're sucked into it. The breath gets trapped up here. It's a mechanical process. You get fixated on the thing. Listening tanks. You lose access to your peripheral vision, also known as your tools and training, and then transformation diminishes for your client. And there's no faster way for the imposter syndrome to jump out from behind a dumpster and give you a little smacky poo than when you've got a bunch of clients that are stuck.
I'm thinking a little bit to stay on that story too, especially with the woman that, was going through this process that I would say definitely inspired you. I guess that would be a moment for you where you said there were the 2 times you fell in love. So this would have been, the first one was your sport. And I would say that love that you fell into, and this will connect a little bit with what Dave was, I think, leaning into, that can become very passionate for us. So like all of us from a sporting background, find that passion. And then I guess it can be a game of words or on a sort of a spectrum. Does your passion turn into an addiction? And then how do you manage that? So I'm curious in the sense of, and even thinking back to myself a little bit with sport, as a fighter, you were very competitive. So like you wanted to win. Now in this new career path that you've fallen in love with, how do you balance being passionate to potentially being addicted to, I would almost say, like, you could be addicted to wanting to help people so much that you could almost fall back into a similar situation where maybe your lifestyle changes and then all of a sudden you're in a new like mode of crisis.
Yeah. This is my 366th podcast I've been on, interviewed on one thing. Mike Bledsoe called me a one-trick pony once upon a time, and I was like, sweet. I only have to do one thing. And it's just the words. That's all I do. It's all I talk about. And that is, so y'all are asking your fantastic questions. And when I keep my breath low and slow, when I engage in the things that I love, then it's a healthy interaction. Okay. So I can very accurately say that, okay, fine. Yes. I ended my fight career with a victim mentality. I ended my fight career because my breathing mechanics, Wim Hof wasn't around. This is the late 90s. There was nobody who was talking about breathing. Nobody was talking about mobility. Nobody was talking about down regulation. You know what they were talking about, or what we were doing? It was like, hey, wash down a handful of Rip Fuel with a glass of Ultimate Orange, and let's go in there and get after it. And there's not much longevity to that. So that's another thing that the fitness industry, pre-workout's got nothing on the victim mentality. The real pre-workout for the fitness industry is the victim mentality and the sentences that make it up. I'll show them. I'll prove them all wrong. I'm going to make him want me again. Like she never should have left. All like that trash talk. It's energizing, and it's like using a credit card too much. Comes at a price.
So are you finding that maybe that's a big development for you personally, which you're able to share with a lot of people? Your self-talk has, I would assume, greatly improved over the course of this compared to where it was when you were solely identifying as a fighter, as an athlete.
1,000%. It's the difference between unconscious breath trapped in your chest and conscious breathing down in your abdomen. I had zero awareness about how my language, and when I say language, we're known as the language people, and that's fantastic. It's nice to be known for something. We talk about breath enough that we might as well be known as the language and the breathing people. And when I talk about language, everybody, I'm referring to your internal dialogue and your external dialogue, what you think, what you say, and what you write. And most people's education, this is simply an education issue. This is not an intelligence issue. This is not a deservance issue. This is an education issue. Most people's education about their language, their words, it comes down to regular spelling, grammar, and definitions. That's it. Very rarely does anyone have any classes in high school or college about how to use their words, which you can totally do, to stay focused on what's important, keep the drama down, build yourself up in your imagination, breathe well, listen well, and do the things you want to do. Yeah. Now, my language was, is this a good time to recite the definition of the victim mentality? Because I can do it.
Please.
Most people have never heard it. So here's some numbers for everybody, your audience. And I've heard of it. This is very cool. What am I referring to when I say this? So a little bit of backstory about how, when I first heard about y'all, Power Monkey. Yeah. Mike Bledsoe told me about y'all. And so we went on Barbell Shrugged January 20th, 2017. I flew from Thailand to Los Angeles to do a podcast. That's called Showing Up. And we went on that show because I reached out to 5 people in the fitness industry, CrossFit specifically, and said, who's got the best podcast in CrossFit? I have something to say about how our words influence our breath for better and for worse, because I just spent the last 10 years in a number of yoga communities teaching this stuff. And it's very easy to get, here's a pen, here's a piece of paper, write down that story that bothers you. And then we go in there and do the thing, and the breathing unlocks, and yogis like that. And so they all came back and said Barbell Shrugged. And one of them said, oh, by the way, Mike Bledsoe is aware of your work. Would you like an introduction? I said, yes, I would. And we were on fumes, man. We were, been in business for 2 years and hadn't found any traction anywhere. I'd done a couple of CrossFit classes. And I went to my business partner. I was like, man, these people are, if we get this in front of them, I bet it catches. And man, was I right. So anyway, that show drops. We get introduced to that scene through the best mouthpiece in the time. We ended up doing an online course with Mike. He and I welded each other at the hip for about 1.5 years. And he just told me about all the cool people doing cool stuff in the fitness industry. That's the first time I heard about y'all. And so when Mike said, hey, would you like to go on their show? I'm like, yes, I would like to go on their show. Thank you very much. Awesome. Yeah, I go on rants and tangents professionally. Yeah.
That's no stress. I tease people often that it'll be a momentary monologue with Mike. So every once in a while I go off on my, there was a couple episodes ago, Dave had to ask me if I was actually asking a question or not to somebody.
No, it's all worth listening to.
Brought me back in.
Yeah, all worth listening to.
So we can definitely relate. We're also men of words. We like to talk and listen, probably in equal harmony.
Let's do this victim mentality. So the numbers, everybody, 30, 50, 80. We remember 30%. This is the teacher in me. I was a teacher before I got into this language game. I got a master's in education. 30, 50, 80. We remember 30% of what we hear, 50% of what we write, and 80% of what we turn around and explain, teach, or share. And most people, like I said about 2 minutes ago, have never heard the definition of the victim mentality, much less written it down. So if your listeners pick up a pen, and I'll do it twice. In my opinion, it's that important to have a working, and even better is the actual definition, verbatim definition for the victim mentality. When you add that into a conversation about mindset, now you've got a way more holistic conversation, because that's the thing that most people want to turn the volume down on when they get into working on their mindset. Hey, can I not feel like I'm an imposter for 3 seconds, please? Yeah. And so when you, yeah. So here it is twice. I'll do the first time slow, and then I'll speed it up the second time and add some polish. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. Second time, faster with some extra paint. The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where a person tends, it's a tendency, everybody. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. Where a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends, underline that word, on a habitual, circle that word, thought process and attributions. So that second sentence is right between the eyes, right where it belongs. The victim mentality depends, as in it has to have a habitual thought process. Habitual accurately implies duration. It doesn't happen overnight, and addiction. We absolutely get addicted to it. And then thought process. What's a thought process? Fair enough question. It's very simple. It's the words that you use repetitively. It's how you put your words together. Everybody's got one. It's happening right now. And then attributions. What's an attribution? That's a characteristic. And second to the words, which is actually more important than the words, is the breathing. The victim mentality depends on people breathing in their chest. Because when my breath is in my chest, it's this thing that just it feeds itself. You know, I tell myself a story. They need to respect me more. I just made a picture of I'm in the picture and they're in the picture, and they're not doing what I want them to do, or they're disrespecting me. I'm on the receiving end, and then who likes that? So it's this stress response that traps the breath, forces me, again, fixation, forces me to stare at that same picture again, and I'm very likely going to use the same thought process, combination of words, to tell myself a story about that scenario, just like I did, and then other scenarios, because that whole reticular activating system thing. And then unbeknownst to me, I get this big problem with my mindset. And then from there, I'm like, oh, well, you know, it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking that the solutions to my problems, which are so big and complicated, the solution has to be equally as big and complicated. I'm here to say that is 99% of the time, it's a generous number, not the case. Give me a pen and a piece of paper and let's get the words on paper. And it's easy to prove. It's easy to work. It's a story we tell ourselves.
I'm curious about a couple of components to that.
Please.
One is the sociological component, meaning if you surround yourself with people, and I feel like this happens a lot, you surround yourself with people who think similarly to you in terms of victim mentality, it's almost a comfort zone to be able to say that other people are going through something similar. Do you notice with people that you work with that they tend to lean into having relationships with people who are other victims so that it makes them feel better about their own situations? And if so, how do we manage that component of the relationship of being a victim?
Good question. Yeah, it's the gossip table. You know, if you're going to sit at the gossip table, you got to show up with some dirt, right? And so when someone gets sick and tired of feeling, like I said, not good enough, and like everybody's got it so much easier than them, and then why even try, and all those things, or whatever pushes people over the edge to book in for some mindset coaching. And it's usually the negative stuff. Very rarely does someone book in for a coach to help them with their mindset when the sun's out, right? And so that is a a statement, a major statement of intent. And part of what we do at Enlifted is, yes, we coach them and we help them change their stories. We also teach them as we go. Okay, so when someone becomes aware that they're participating in the story they tell themselves, and hey, if I keep using these words in certain ways, I'm going to keep getting victim-centric stories. It doesn't matter how sick I am of it. It doesn't matter how tired someone is of feeling like a loser. If you keep saying, she ruined my life, you're just going to park yourself in the stands. See, most people's, like I said, most people's language tricks them. It's working against them. It tricks them into being innocent bystanders in their life. That's terrifying. That's existentially terrifying. NPCs, non-playable characters, spectators in the stands, and for some people, that's way more not really on the deathbed though. Way more comforting or quote unquote safe than extracting them. So if you change your words, there's so much downstream from the story that we're telling ourselves right now. And when someone changes those words, those seemingly minor adjustments in their everyday ordinary language, a lot of stuff changes downstream, from perspective to rate of speech to inflection, absolutely breathing. And when someone is breathing well, let's focus on that. So that is a specific answer to your question, Dave. When someone improves their breathing mechanics, they very rarely, when someone is, they're going to feel better. When someone is feeling better, very rarely do they want to be around uptight people that are, well, breath trapped in the chest. So it's a multi-level way of changing the scenery, and there's absolutely friction involved. Okay, because some parts of us want to, I'm right there with them, want to sit at the gossip table. Okay, I want to hear the stories, part of me still, and that's fine. Do I need to be perfect with a perfect mindset before I can go out and get the stuff I want to across the finish line? No, not even close. You turn that trash talking voice down in your head by 50%, and it's you and David Goggins neck and neck. Trust me, this is what we do professionally. And there are parts of me that, want to hear about other people's failures, because it's like, oh, that validates and then I catch it just like this, because I know what that feels like. And I know what happens if I keep flirting with using those words. And I like breathing well. I like speaking well. I like listening well. And I've got so many great whys as to why I'm going to continue to manicure, moderate, maintain my conscious awareness about the sounds that are coming out of my face and what's going on between my ears and what's happening at the end of my fingers. There's all the reasons in the world to get good at that. It's easy. It really is. Living with that stuff, that's the real hard stuff. And there's some sting involved. Like I said, there's some sting involved in going into the stories of, we hear all kinds of stories, man.
I can imagine. I have a secondary part of this question, but I wanted to just dive into the mention of breathing techniques, and it's probably a lot more elaborate than maybe we even have time for today, just being such an important topic. And we've had some breathing experts on the podcast in the past, and have applied some of them to our own training and our own lifestyles. But from your perspective, you've mentioned already the importance of this. Are there some tangible things that we can maybe pass along to listeners that are at least some good initiation things, or things to think about in terms of how to get our breath to work for us? Some things that you implement and pass along to some people you work with?
Yeah, very cool. Go have a conversation with someone that you're close to at about 85% of your normal rate of speech. So we get asked a lot, hey, what do we do? What do we do? And I have two answers. Okay, that's one of them, because here's what's going to happen when someone slows down their rate of speech, and 15% is tangible. They give themselves the space and the clarity to start connecting some dots, very important dots. And also, when someone slows down their rate of speech, the breath begins to unlock. Okay, and when the breath loosens up, the rhythm of the conversation majorly improves. Okay. It's way more of a dialogue instead of a monologue. So when someone's jacked up in a sympathetic nervous system response, stress response, their breath is trapped in the chest, and you engage with them, we've all done this. How good of a listener is it? How enjoyable of an experience is it? And so go have a conversation with someone just a pinch slower than you normally talk, and you tell me what happens. Okay. So that's a way that someone can experience what we're talking about. Okay. And then the second thing is soft talk. Take out the thinks and the maybes and the mights and the sort ofs and the kind ofs and the guesses and the possiblies, probablys, and you get more solid in your speech, and indecision and anxiety about life come down. There are flavors of anxiety, of course. And that'll unlock your breath too.
Man, the pace one is going to be a tough one for me. Growing up in New Jersey and living in New York, just pace of life. I'm moving like a million miles an hour. Yeah, Mike is silky smooth. His voice.
We might struggle with regional dialects, but Mark, I was just thinking while you're talking, you're basically my overall synopsis of your methods fit with my weightlifting. So it's the tried and true, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So like if you want a fast resolution, like slow it down, smooth it out. And then it really does sound like what you get to the core of for everybody is getting people to find, really impactful ways to think about how you're thinking. So like the metacognition for the crazy talk words, but to be able to think about your thoughts, you have to slow down. So I like that, slowing your conversations down by about 15%. I think that's probably a good tool for anybody, because it also allows for enough pause to listen, not only to yourself, but to, listen to the person that you're talking to. So those for me are nice reminders for us also to offer to our community.
1,000%. Alan Watts, the great Alan Watts, who's the best, and in my opinion, the best that we'll ever have Zen teacher for the West. He said, when you learn to think about your thinking, you become alive in a new way. And one of the best ways for us to think about our things. So the rate of speech, the faster, here's a good rule of thumb, everybody. The faster the story goes, the harder it is to change. The faster the mechanics of storytelling, the faster the story goes. So the faster your mindset goes, which is the story you tell yourself, the harder it is going to be for you to change. Very rarely does a mechanic take a car out to the interstate and pop the hood doing 80 and start changing out parts. It's the same thing there too. And I'm from the South. I'm from Virginia, so we there's a little bit of a slowerness there. So I had a leg up. And then I go over to Thailand, jack my knee up. Guess what? It wasn't the end of the world. It wasn't the end of my life. It wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to me. I go over to Thailand, even though I told myself that, and jacked my knee up, had my second knee surgery, turned myself into a grown-ass man baby. That's a technical term. And darkness descended, and it was an absolute punch-up. Get it? Getting out of that story. Fast forward to 2018, when I go to that 10th Planet class, the guys were great. Okay, it was dummy me. Like I said, my jujitsu, it belongs in a museum. So I go in there, he put me in something. I didn't know what it was. I thought I could get out, and my elbow explodes, rips out of socket. Everybody's like, oh gosh, because it sounded like Jurassic Park. And instantly, it was really cool. Instantly, I go to my calendar, like elbow explodes. I got a Tommy John. I got a souvenir. And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I looked at my elbow, and I went to my calendar, and I was like, okay, yeah, that kettlebell certification on it, we'll go ahead and take that off. And Paleo Effects, in 2018, when that was still a thing, it's like, yeah, we got a booth, and I really only need one arm to do that. And Pascal's coming in; she can help me set up, and that's cool. And then I go, hey, Mike, let's go get in the car, because my arm's now flopping around, and I'm on the insurance, and so let's go ahead and go. And then when we walk out the door, and I'm talking about some girl I think's hot, because I've got the mental real estate to do it, and I've got my it's flopped, like I've got a floppy arm now. And that, for me, I still enjoy telling that story, because that's what happens when you own your story as opposed to your story owning you. And that is it. The only thing that is a skill.
So you're 100%, I guess maybe you can go into it deeper, but you see that moment, or maybe you turn to that moment into a positive just based off of your ability to slow things down in that moment and really like just kind of, take hold of it.
Majorly, it turned into, as it stands right now, it led into the biggest professional win that I've had, which is these certifications. So like I said, I was a teacher, and now I teach people how to help people with their change words and their story and unlock their breath. And so when this happened, and then I get checked out a couple days later, and this guy can take my arm and do like figure eights with it, and it was obvious that something very wrong was wrong, or I needed some attention. And I messaged my business partner over in Thailand. I said, "Hey, dude," and I used the technical terms. I forget what they called it, but he goes, "Yeah, come on over to Thailand. We'll turn it into a work retreat." So I went over there and had the surgery. It was cheaper. And we turned it into a work retreat. And that's where I was like, "Hey, man, let's do a course with Mike Bledsoe. There's something there. Let's focus this stuff on the fitness industry." And it was our second course. And that, unbeknownst to us, is what launched the certifications. That was 5 years ago. And I'm a happy kid, man. I like talking about this stuff. I like teaching it. It's fun to watch the students go out and, do the things with it, and come back with stories and questions.
So from a student perspective, and just things that we can again apply to the way that we all address these individual issues. You mentioned the 30, 50, 80, and you stressed a couple of times the importance of writing things down, that 50% retention when things are written down. I'm guessing that that's something that you recommend people do on a regular basis. Write down the stories, use the words that are trying to kind of make it resonate in a particular way. But the 80% of actually telling the story, how do you do that? I mean, as an educator, as someone that kind of works with people, I can see how you do it, where you're helping someone. But how do you recommend someone being able to actively go out and tell their stories without it feeling forced?
Okay, good question. So it's not telling their story, it's teaching.
Okay.
So when someone teaches something, when they explain something, when they share something, that's when they get the 80%.
Okay.
ROI. And I'll give ourselves some credit. We've done a good job of demystifying the conversation about mindset and also gamifying it. Y'all have a pen, paper? We got language games, man. We got tons of them. Write this sentence down. This is quick and fast, and it's like, oh, that's what these guys are talking about. How can I ever get over this? And everybody listening, this is a language game that you can turn around and share with someone, and there's a real good chance they're going to have an experience. And that whole "she who feels it knows it" thing, that's very true. When someone feels the difference, when they change some words, then they're like, then now you really got their attention. Mm-hmm. So, Dave, did you write that sentence down?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So he wrote it. Go ahead and read it, please.
How can I ever get over not competing at the Olympic Games?
Okay, perfect. Describe the energy, describe the feeling that statement, that sentence creates.
Missed opportunity. Comes back to maybe something we talked about earlier, or I've heard you speak about, feeling like a failure, having been identified as someone that should have been that person and not. So those are the things. And I feel like I've surpassed it by this point, but definitely still something that pops up every once in a while.
Cool. So that's what he's feeling. Where are you feeling it in your body? Most of the time, our feelings are localized somewhere, whether it's in the chest or it's in the solar plexus, or it's this thing in your throat. Where do you, it's in the chest. 10's high, 1's low. What number is that energy?
It's about a 5.
Perfect. Those are 3 fantastic questions, everybody, when you want to know more about your client's emotional status. Okay, so what are you feeling? Where are you feeling it? And 10's high, 1's low. What number is it? And also, and it's a scale. So the stronger the emotional charge, everybody, the more consumed people get with it. And it's natural, it's normal, it's great. And then when you ask them those questions, it puts them in the observer role to some degree, which is helpful. Okay, great. So take your pen, Dave, and scratch out one word. We're just doing one. Scratch out the word ever.
Mm-hmm.
And read it again.
How can I get over not competing in the Olympic Games? I already have.
What happened when you took out just one word?
Yeah, it becomes much more attainable. Absolutely.
Carol Dweck would approve of this conversation. So she's she talks about growth mindset, fixed mindset. If someone has a fixed mindset, it's because they have a fixed language. And if someone has a growth mindset, it's because they have a growth language. And it's better than 99%. Everybody, it's more like 99.69% of the time. You run that language game with someone, they're going to feel the difference by taking out just one word, because we put that one word ever in there and it turns a perfectly good question that percentage of the time into a statement of I'm screwed. Yeah, fine. It's got a question mark on the end of it, but it's not a question. It's because it spikes the drama and people deliver it like, how can I ever get over this? And I'm going to sound smart here for a second, a presupposition. It presupposes that there's no way I can get over it. Okay. How can I ever get over the divorce? How can I ever get over this injury? How can I ever get over blah, 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 blah? You take out the ever, and then the drama comes down and you got way more of a real question because it presupposes that you can. How can I get over this injury? And then the reticular activating system it starts playing on team what you want to do instead of team what you don't want to have happen again.
I want to hear Mike's.
Oh, you want to hear mine?
Yes.
Oh, well, okay. I have to think about it for a second, but staying on that one, no, because I was just thinking about yours, and that was fun for me. And I think we have.
I got another language game for you, Mike. This is super easy.
No, that's great. I'll do that one. I want to stay on not necessarily Dave's for a second, but just that question. And then I was happy kind of where you went with it, because I was gonna get about as combative as I ever get, which is almost zero. So I like that, like you said, the taking the ever out. That makes it a legit question, and questions are good. Questions generally lead us to answers or deeper questions or deeper conversations and enlightenment and all of these things. I was tempted to assume that you were going to say, let's take this, out of a question state and say, like, make it an I can statement, I can get over this. And then then it sounds almost like gimmicky self-help to me. So I was happy that you stayed with the question, because I think questions are so necessary, and our community will know that with Dave and I, like, the favorite things that we get from people are questions.
Oh, yeah.
The favorite things as coaches that we like to do are ask questions, because we like to, gauge from the responses where we're going with that. So this was more affirming of, I really like how you did that. That was a nice tool. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. And I'm right there with you, buddy. Questions, good questions, coach, versus I got all the right answers, coach. That's usually the difference between a professional and an amateur. Here's the mechanics, everybody. Answers push, questions pull. I'm going to say that again. Answers push, questions pull. Said another way. Answers I tell them, questions they tell them. And when you combine low and slow breathing with good, simple questions, that's that no can defend shit. Because I can talk about non-attachment all day long. And if my breath is trapped in my chest, I'm attached to where this story goes. When I combine low and slow breathing with simple, good questions, it's amazing what comes out of your clients. And guess what? They have they have their answers. It was the angels descended when that dawned on me that I don't have to be a 1-800 hotline. I got all the right answers, coach, because that's just a little bit of pressure. And that means I've got to be smarter than all of my clients. Okay. And then if they don't agree with me, then it creates this very imbalanced dynamic from the very get-go. No, we are firmly in the camp of ask good questions, get the stories written down, breathe, change some words, help them slow down their rate of speech, and unlock the thing.
Dave still wants me to have mine. He's still waiting. I can tell.
No, I'm fine. If there's another language game that we can play, Mike will take the lead on that one. But I feel like you got another one for us, Mark. What do you got?
Yeah, we got tons of them. Mike, what's your mostest important goal for 2024? Let's just personally or professionally.
10,000 hugs by the end of January.
Really. Yeah,
I like y'all's style a lot.
Yeah, I feel like we could just draw from Buddy the Elf and find something there for me.
Pick, or maybe not. Okay, maybe not the most important. Just pick one and write it down in a full sentence, however you want to word it. I want to. I will. We're going to. So one full sentence, and this is another language game. So one word. The first one we played. The first one we played with Dave was a one-word language game where we took a word out and had an experience. This is going to be a one-word game where we put a word in and have an experience.
So it can be a goal for 2024.
Correct.
Okay.
I will edit in some Jeopardy music during this time.
All right, got it.
Perfect. Is it in a full sentence, Mike?
Yes.
Okay, that's important, everybody, because that's how people talk. That's how people speak. These in full sentences, and so yeah. Okay, so cool. He wrote it.
I've got a full English, American English sentence, subject, verb, the whole deal. Ready.
My man. You know, for $50,000, I couldn't tell you what a past participle is. I mean, I stare at words all day long. I don't know what a past participle is. Read your sentence.
I will grow the Power Monkey family.
Perfect. He wrote it. He read it. Describe the energy. How does that feel to say?
How does it feel?
Yeah, what kind of feeling does it create?
Oh, the feeling brings about like joy and smiling. Those are like the two things. Yeah.
Perfect.
You guys aren't allowed to laugh either. I'm being so open and honest. And
I'm smiling because you're smiling, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Put a maybe one word anywhere in there.
Okay.
And then read it.
Maybe I will grow the Power Monkey family.
Did y'all see what he did with his mouth? It was like his mouth cover like that, and like what did putting one word, and that's a very cool goal, very important for you, everybody in the fam. What did one word do to the energy of that thing?
Oh, that was like putting a hose on me, like wet clothes.
That right there, everybody, is one of the soft talk keywords, which is maybe. So we get asked a lot, what do we do? Where do we start? It's very simple. It's soft talk. So if we go back to the definition of the victim mentality, habitual thought processes. Okay. There are three pillars in the English language of language patterns that people use roughly 85% of the time to force themselves to create victim-centric stories. And there's flavors of them. And one of the language patterns is called soft talk, and it's the gateway drug. And it's the easiest place to begin, because all you got to do is recognize a handful of words and play the take that out game. So we get these I'm very happy to mail you all. I mailed 3 out to different CrossFit gyms this morning. Mail you all a stack of these things. These are Soft Talk Challenge note cards. And so here, everybody, here are the magic words. And if you still got your pen and paper and you write these down, it will help you. It will help you majorly. And I promise you, these words are in your language, y'all. Everybody listening, and they're causing problems. They're causing you to create excess indecision, which is a flavor of stress. And when someone practices indecision, if these words are in someone's language, they're going to practice indecision. And if they keep doing it for long enough, then they're going to eventually identify themselves as indecisive. Carol Dweck would agree. And when someone identifies themselves as something, they immediately get a lot better at it. The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle is all about that. I'm a non-book recommended dude, and I highly recommend that book. And so here they are. Here we go. Probably, perhaps, feels like, guess. I guess I should spend more time with my wife. Maybe, I could put in a little more effort. Might, possibly, sort of. I'm sort of self-sabotaging. Kind of. Potentially, hopefully, try, one day, should, and almost like. It's almost like I'm procrastinating. And you start paying attention to these words, you're like, oh my gosh, look at all these things. And there's a game to play. And www.enlifted.me/soft talk/ it's a free 7-day challenge. It's a free 7-day challenge, everybody. And that's where the conversation, it's the gateway drug. It's the gateway drug. There's other stuff to do. And if you do that, it'll take you 6 months. Think I'm kidding? I'm not. It'll take you 6 months to cut soft talk use in half. And if you do, you will double your confidence. And then there will be no question at all, period, about how important your words are, because this is where the conversation of mindset is going. I'm calling it now. Mindset. It's this conversation, this big picture thing. I know I need to get better at it, but how? And then there's that confident person over there. Wow, that would have been fun. I'm over here. Whoops, would have been nice. And when we add in what words to use less of and why, and what words to use more of and why, and a little bit about our breath and what to do with a pen, and then mindset becomes practical. Keyword practice. And it's very empowering. So when people say something along the lines of, my life is totally out of control, take out life, put it in story. They're describing what an out of control story feels like. They've lost control of the mechanism. The words are just, it's not girls gone wild, it's words gone wild. Rants, tangents.
It seems like it's slowing down the conversation to be able to see whether or not these words, these soft talk keywords, are actually part of your daily conversation. I think if you actually slow things down, you'll be able to pinpoint them a little bit more easily. So for me, normally a fast talker, I just need to be more cognizant of that. Slow things down, see whether or not I can actually recognize whether or not this speech pattern is something I need to freshen up on. But I think all of us can do this. I think maybe we'll put it to the Power Monkey team just to be more aware of whether or not this is a part of our daily conversation. I feel like Mike is really good about this, and feel like that maybe is probably not something he would regularly use with that sentence that he put forward. But I really like this. It seems like it's someone hedging their bet, essentially. It's someone unsure of the path that they're about to take, and it's a way for them to hedge their bet so that if it doesn't happen for them, they can just sit back and say, oh, well, I didn't think it was going to happen. So we want to take that out of the equation, right? Make those possibilities a little bit more of a reality.
Yeah, make very well said, and make people's experience more participatory. Make because we are participating in the story we're telling ourselves, and most people, they don't think they are. They don't think they are, and further still, how am I doing that? I mean, if we really get if we get kind of spooky about it, take out the kind of, what's more seductive than our own voice in our own head? It's like people have no training. They have no formal education about how powerful their words are and how simple it is to make some seemingly everyday ordinary changes. I mean, how many times I've saved myself weekends where I'm going like, he needs to, and then I take out the he because I know I can hear myself. He needs to. I take out the I need to. Ooh, whoa. Or we might want to think about and take out the might and the think. No, let's do this, and the thing moves forward. That feels good. I feel more capable and competent, and that diminishes the imposter syndrome. Hey, listen up, everybody. The imposter syndrome, there are language patterns to that thing. Okay, the big three, it's the victim mentality, the imposter syndrome, and a telephobia, the fear of not being good enough. And those three things combined, and they're kissing cousins. They're walking hand in hand, skipping down the street. That stuff tanks more coaches' careers than all the other stuff combined. I'm a big fan of email funnels, sure. And the email funnel isn't tanking all the coaches' careers. It's the who would ever want to coach with you? Who do you think you are to try to help somebody? Who, when your life is so messed up, who do you like? Yeah, there's so many other great coaches out there. You'll never turn this into a real business. I've heard them all. I've heard all those things. There's only like 15 sentences that freak people out when it comes to that, and those things are never written down. They're not. Why would anyone put that pen to paper and make those things worse? And I understand that, because guess what? It's as the story comes out, the feelings and emotions get stronger initially, and left unchecked, those spooky questions, they never get answered. They never get answered. And then people are like, they think they've got 592 questions about their life spinning around in their head. They do not. They got less than 20, I promise you. And until they're written down, it feels like 2020, because it's just a thing that are like. So I like it when coaches stay in the game and get good and help deliver transformation to their clients, and and get the two best compliments in business, in my personal and professional opinion. It's repeat customers and referrals. Those are the highest forms of praise. Hey, great job. Really enjoyed working with you. Here's some more of my money, and here's my friend.
Absolutely. We love that same thing. People coming back to camp, hanging out with us again, and wanting to continue to, like Mike said, build a Power Monkey family. Mark, camp, that was a quick hour for us. I feel like we only scratched the surface on the kind of stuff that you work on with your clients and your coaches and your team. And I'd love to be able to chat more about it. But before we get you out of here, are you open to some quick questions from our end?
Yes, please.
All right. First one. I don't know if you're doing CrossFit or anything like that right now in that space, but what sport or discipline do you prefer, weightlifting or gymnastics?
Wow, do I have to choose one of those two? Kettlebells. Kettlebells.
Zach and AJ and Martone for the win.
Oh yeah.
Mike, I was looking at calisthenics last night, buddy. I was looking at some calisthenic videos on YouTube, and I'm like, man, I don't even know what they're called, but that's super muscle up. That looks super fun. And those guys are ripped and very agile. It's like, Mike Salemi's a good friend of mine. He's like,
We'll take it. We'll pass it along to our kettlebell crew. They'll be appreciative.
Yeah. I like the write-in, ballot. So that was good.
Okay.
Number 2, anyone that you think would be a great interview for us to have on the podcast?
1,000%. Megan Henry. So she was this close to making the U.S. Olympic team for skeleton. And she, as soon as you said what you said about the how can I ever get over this? She's one of our coaches. She's a personal friend. She's speaking at our event in October, and she has a very harrowing story of I'll just say it, a contraceptive gone, because she goes on podcasts. She talks about this very openly. Something called the Nuva ring. There was a class action lawsuit, and blood clots in the lungs, couldn't do the thing, didn't think she was ever going to get back to it, got back up to the peak of the top, missed the team by just literally a second. And and she's really entertaining too. She's really
All right.
entertaining too. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love sitting with athletes about their journeys.
Happy to make that intro.
Amazing. Thank you. Mike, what were you going to say?
I just said that she's on the list, that we haven't had a skeleton person, and I used to train with some skeleton and bobsledders, so always happy to get them on.
I didn't know skeleton was a thing until like I met her, and I was like, that is
skeleton's gnarly, man.
It's intense.
Is gnarly. For all of the people who are not aware, it's luge, but head first. So imagine going down, 50, 60, 70 miles an hour head first down an ice pocket. It's a gnarly sport. You mentioned a book earlier, but any TV shows or movies you've seen recently that you'd recommend?
No.
All right. Fair enough. Not a TV show watcher or movie. That's fine.
Big Trouble in Little China. I mean, that's the last movie that I watched. I've watched that movie.
1985 special right there.
Right.
Before we started the podcast, we were talking about growing up in the 80s. So I think we might have to have some more talk about all the greatness that came out in that decade. Yes. But Mark, thank you so much for the time, man. It was great chatting with you and getting to know you a little bit more and all the great work you're doing. Where can people find what you got going on?
Thanks for having me on, gentlemen. Enlifted.me. That's our website about the certifications. We've got a podcast called Get Enlifted, and it's 4 coaches talking about words and stories and transforming mindsets, getting results. And then Instagram at Enlifted Coaches. And I highly, like, only if you're into cool, free, awesome stuff, highly recommend doing the 7-day soft talk challenge. Enlifted.me //soft talk / and it will start the game. And there's a game, everybody. We're all playing it.
Fantastic, man. We'll put it in the show notes for sure. Thank you again. Really appreciate the time, man. For all the listeners out there, please be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. We do have our next Power Monkey Camp, our 20th camp, 10-year anniversary coming up very, very soon in just a few weeks. Just check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, at Dave Durante, and at Mike Service. On behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your hosts. I'm Dave Durante with my co-host Mike Service. And until next time, thank you all for listening.